Good morning, afternoon, or evening. My name is Shannon, and today I'm going to be doing the end of year book haul that Miss Destiny Sidwell created. I previously filmed this video yesterday, but then I actually accidentally lost all of the footage. So here I am filming it again. So let's just get started. The first question was, what was your most disappointing read of the year? And that was easily for me The Confidence of Wildflowers by Miss Michaela Smeltzer. I actually DNF'd this book. I had pretty high hopes going into it, but it's an age gap where the girl is freshly 19 and he's bordering on 40, I'm pretty sure, and that alone creeps me out. And there's also the fact that she's in a relationship for the first half of this book, and I couldn't stand it. I really just hate the cheating trope. No matter which way you cut it, you should have more respect for your partner, and I just decided to stop reading it after it just got to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. The next question was the underdog book of the year, and that was easily for me Binding and Keeping 13. I love this book so much. I wasn't expecting to really like it at all. I've heard such mixed opinions about this book, but I absolutely adored it. I love Johnny and Shannon more than anything. This book is about Shannon, and she recently transferred to Tillman College because of bullying that went on at her previous school, and on her first day at Tillman College, Johnny accidentally hits her in the head with a rugby ball. And since then, he feels an overwhelming urge to protect her and take care of her, and it's just such a good romance. And Shannon also has a pretty rough home life, so that factors in a lot into both of these books. But I have nothing but the best to say about this book, and I would highly recommend it to anyone. The next question was a book that you felt was overhyped, and that was, for me, Twisted Games by Anna Huang. I did not love this book at all. I felt it was a very played out story, especially since I was practically raised on the Princess Diaries movies, and if you've seen the second one, this book felt like I was just watching that movie again. It felt like deja vu for me. I just wasn't really a huge fan of it because of that, but it's a bodyguard and princess romance, and it's interesting. It just was overdone for me. The next question was your favorite book couples of the year. I actually have two. The first one has to be Theo and Winter from Reckless by Elsie Silver. This is the fourth in the Chestnut Springs series. I absolutely adore this book and their romance. Theo loves her in a way that I feel every woman in the world wants to be loved, and I just love their dynamic so much. This is actually a pregnancy trope romance, and it's actually done really well, so don't disregard it just because of that. Next, I am very reluctant to recommend this, but I love Iris and August's romance and Kind of Love so much that I feel I have to mention it in this. They have a soulmate kind of love, but the first half of this book is really rough to read because it is really heavy with descriptions of domestic abuse and SA, horrible things, but they have been in love with each other for so long, and it's just the most wonderful thing to see Iris heal from her previous relationship and see August being able to fight for her now that she's no longer in that situation. The next question is your favorite main characters of the year. I actually have three favorite characters. The first one, if you didn't already see this coming, is Julian Hates from Daisy Hates the Great Undoing. I love this man so much. I think he's just about perfect. I've talked about this book so much, but this series, the Magnolia Park series, is basically Gossip Girl in London. That's how I've always described it. It's the quickest way to describe it. But Julian is actually in the kind of London mob scene, and he is most known for stealing pieces of art, and it's really interesting, and the romance he goes through in this book is heartbreaking and beautiful, and I love him so much. The next character that I absolutely adore is Miss Willa from Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Chestnut Springs series. She is so amazing. She's such a spitfire, and she's fiercely protective and loyal to the people she loves, and I just loved reading this book so much, and it was mostly because of her. My next favorite character was Mr. Aaron Warner. I love this man so much. He is probably my favorite book boyfriend ever, and I can't explain why without giving a huge spoiler, so I'm not. But he's perfect. I love him, and he gives such a I hate everyone else in the world but you vibe, and I just love him so much. But this series itself is actually about a girl named Juliet who is pulled out of an asylum because she has the power to kill someone just by touching them with her bare skin. And so Warner actually brings her out of the asylum with the hope of turning her into a weapon for the reestablishment. And the story just goes on from there, but it's so good. The next question was a book that surprised you, and that would have to be Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read this twice this year. The first time I rated it 2.5 stars. I did not like it at all. I thought it was boring and dull, and the characters are just such morally gray people. Not even morally gray. Some of them are just bad people. But this book is written in an interview format where the members of Daisy Jones and the Six are being interviewed 20 years later after everything that went down with their band. And the first time I read it, I was picturing them sitting in chairs being interviewed. However, between the first and the second time I read it, I watched the show. And when I read it the second time, I was able to picture what they were discussing instead of them discussing it, if that makes sense. And I loved it so much more. I rated it 5 stars. It also brings a very interesting discussion about sexism in the music industry and how it was for women in the music industry in the 70s, and it was really cool. The next question was your new favorite authors, and I have 2. The first one is Stephanie Garber. She wrote the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. I love this series so much, but more than that, I just really enjoy the way that she writes. There are some things she writes that are so lyrical and beautiful that it almost sounds like poetry, and I just love reading those beautifully written lines. Along the same lines of that, I also love Jessa Hastings' writing for that reason. She just has such a way with words that she's able to make you feel it in your soul almost when she says something, and it's just so magical when you experience reading one of those lines, and you just have to go back and reread it because it's just so beautiful. The next question was your happiest read of the year, and for this I decided on When in Rome. This is such a cute fluffy romance. A pop star is deciding to run away from her life, and she ends up in Rome, Kentucky, where she ends up having to rent a room from this grumpy baker, and it's just the cutest romance. The next question was your most frustrating read of the year, and for me that was Better Than the Movies by Miss Lynn Painter. I know people love this book, but it was not for me. Liz is just so frustrating. This book is about Liz and Wes, and they're neighbors and kind of rivals, but one of his old friends moves back into town, I'm pretty sure, and she's always had a crush on him, and they strike up a deal where he will help her get him, but they start to fall for each other, and she's just so oblivious to what's going on around her, to the fact that Wes has feelings for her. It's just so frustrating. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and shake her because I was so annoyed with her, and she just couldn't realize what was right in front of her. But I know that that's kind of an unpopular opinion, so I guess I'm just out of the norm for this book. The next question was your favorite adaptation of the year, and obviously The Summer I Turned Pretty was wonderful, but I have to go with Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I loved this movie. I thought it was done very well and adapted very well for the screen, despite the fact that they changed some things for the movie. This is a romance between the first son of the United States, Alex, and Prince Henry of England. They cause a pretty public scandal, and then they have to pretend to be friends in the public eye, and things just kind of go from there, and it's really interesting. But the movie was also done very well. And then I also have to add an honorable mention to The Color Purple, because the musical movie adaptation of this book is coming out in a couple weeks, and I haven't seen it obviously, but it looks like it's going to be absolutely amazing, and I just finished this book. It is about two black sisters and their journey through the early 1900s Georgia, and it's such an overwhelmingly powerful story, and I am really, really excited to see it adapted, and I think it will be done really well. The next question was the longest book you read this year, and that is without a doubt Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I loved this book. I thought it was so much fun. I actually reread this full series this year since I only read the first 4 books when I was in elementary school. I do have a reading vlog up on my channel if you want to go check it out, but this was definitely the longest book. The next question was the shortest book you read this year, and that would have to be An Encore of Roses. It is a novella right after A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This could not really be classified as a novella for me. It was wickedly short. I think it was 30 pages long. I honestly would have called it an epilogue. It is the story of Constanza writing a letter to her husband about why she had to kill him, and it's just the novella following that, but it was so short. The next question was your favorite cover of the year, and that would have to be Daisy Hates the Great Undoing by Miss Jessa Hastings. I love this cover so much, and all of the Magnolia Park series covers are profoundly beautiful, and the thing I love about them so much is that once you read the book, everything on the cover makes sense. And if you have any questions about this cover, you should read the book to find out why it is what it is. The next question was a book you haven't stopped thinking about, and if you haven't already guessed, it is Binding 13 and Daisy Hates the Great Undoing. I profoundly love these books. These are 6-star books. They are imprinted on my soul. I think about them all the time, and I would probably just steadily reread these if I didn't have a mountain-sized TBR. The next question was the cringiest book you read this year, and that would have to be Darling Venom by Parker S. Huntington. I did enjoy this book. It is a romance between a girl and her best friend's older brother. It's a very interesting discussion on grief and the way it changes people and bonds people, but there were some name drops of pop culture things that I didn't think needed to be in there, and there were just some really cringy moments that I felt I had to almost look away because this shouldn't be happening. The next question was an unpopular book you loved, and that would have to be Travis by Mia Sheridan for me. I really enjoyed this book. I rated it 4.5 stars. I cried. This is the continuation of the Archer's Voice universe by Mia Sheridan, and it is about his cousin Travis and his redemption arc, him finding love, and I really, really enjoyed it, but I've seen people say some pretty bad things about this book. The next question was, what was your highest and lowest rated books on Goodreads, and do you agree? I am going to start with the lowest, and it is Secretly Yours by Tessa Bailey. This book was rated, I think, as an average of 3.37, which is pretty low for Goodreads, and I have to say I agree. This book was really frustrating. It's about a romance between Hallie and Julian, and Hallie's had a huge crush on Julian for forever, and now they're kind of forced to be around each other now that she's doing the gardening on the house he's living at, and she actually writes him a letter that is signed from a secret admirer, and then things start to happen between them, and she still hasn't confessed to writing these letters, and she continues to write them, and it just felt so immature for the age she is. I think she should have just told him, and it was really frustrating to read the conflict play out the way it did because it was so avoidable. Then the highest rated book was, to no one's surprise, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. This book, I definitely agree, this was a 5-star read. It was the perfect conclusion, and I absolutely loved it. The next question was your favorite quotes of the year, and they are all from the Magnolia Park series. There's just something about the way that Miss Hastings writes that I never seem to get it out of my head, but I will read my favorite quote and then a couple others. So it is, "She is the goddess in the Botticelli clamshell. Her eyes are the water lilies in Monet's pond. She is the hand of God reaching down to mankind. Klimt's kiss is a portrait of us, and I'm gonna steal it, take it, make it mine, make her mine too. That is from Daisy Hates the Great Undoing, and I just love it so much. And then there's also this one, because BJ and I are unquantifiable. It's the nuances of all the ways we love each other and have loved each other and keep on accidentally loving each other, and it's the intricacies of our threads we've knotted together, and it's the secrets we know about each other, and it's that one broken heart we share. There are so many more examples. This is one I just found. I literally had tabs just for the beautiful lines that Jissa writes. I have a feeling running right through, like being tucked tightly into your bed at night, like a safe certainty that I will major in the minor details of him forever. She writes things with such a beautiful grace that I can't even begin to describe. But I literally could read quotes from that book all day long, and all of these books all day long. Anywho, the next question was a book that you felt had an interesting concept, and I immediately thought of The Drowned Woods by Emily Lloyd-Jones. This is a YA fantasy book where a girl named Mare is a water wielder, and she just recently escaped from the prince because they've been using her powers for their gains, and someone tries to recruit her for a heist that would get back at the prince, and she agrees, and she also enlists the help of a couple other people to help with the heist. And it's a very, very interesting book, and it was definitely the most unique book I read in terms of plot, and I would really recommend it. The next question was a book that you would read again, and I have so many books for this. I would reread Archer's Voice, I would reread the Magnolia Park series, the Hunger Games series, the Harry Potter series. I am not one to shy away from rereading a book if I love it. It just feels like coming home when you reread a book that you love. The next question was a reading goal reflection and my 2024 reading goal. I set my goal as 100 books for this year, and I achieved that. I'm currently at 110, and I think I'll do 100 next year again, because I don't want to make it so high that it's unattainable for me, but I still want it to be something I have to work for, because 100 books in a year isn't easy, but I achieved it, and I don't want to make it unattainable for me. The last question was, after this year's reading, what am I prioritizing in next year's reading? And I have a couple goals. So I am one for binge reading. So once I start a book, it's really hard for me to want to do anything else, and that is not great for me, because once I finish a book, I'm then apprehensive about starting another, because I don't want to put off things that I need to get done, and so I'll end up not reading for days because I have things I have to do, and I don't want reading to get in the way of that. But then I just don't read. So I definitely want to try to learn how to not binge read, and I'd also really like to read more fantasy books, because I definitely got more into fantasy in the second half of this year, but I would really like to branch out more and try different kinds of fantasy books as well, like urban fantasy and high fantasy and all that stuff. Those are all the questions for this video, so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. All of my social media is linked down below for you guys. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you guys can get notified right when I post a new video. Also, I left all the questions down below in the comments if you guys would either like to make your own video or to leave me your answers in the comments as well, so I can get some more book recommendations. I hope you guys are all having an absolutely wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are in the world, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!